It's the place where senior living insights and entertainment collide, like two star-crossed lovers meeting at a polka dance. This is the Bellwether Senior Living Podcast, hosted by Jeff Bell of Bell PR and Marketing. Senior living marketers, put your hands together for the host with the most. Okay, maybe not, but he tries. Jeff Bell.
Thanks, Tom. Always appreciate the introduction. Host with the most. As I've said before, probably a little much, but I do the best I can. So welcome to the Bellwether Senior Living Insights Podcast, Senior Living Podcast, whatever name it is that we have on it. And I am Jeff Bell. I am president, CEO, principal, founder, all of the above for Bell PR and Marketing, and really excited to be back. Excited about our guest today. We are going to move. We were on our last episode, we were down in Texas, as they say, in the San Antonio area. Great conversation with James Lee from Bella Groves. If you haven't had a chance to listen to that, highly recommend it. Today we move to Iowa, and we will be speaking with our good friend Ward Phillips, who is the vice president. I want to make sure I get it right. Vice president of business development for WesleyLife. And so we're going to bring him in now. And when he jumps on screen, then we will get rolling here. And there he is. Ward, welcome to the Bellwether Senior Living Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Hey, we're glad to do it. And as I mentioned just before I introduced you, you are the VP of Business Development for WesleyLife. And I mentioned we were down in Texas last time in San Antonio. Now we've made our way up to Iowa. So we're talking senior living all across the country. Tell me, first of all, just kind of give our listeners who don't know a little introduction to who WesleyLife is. I know that in terms of reputation in Iowa, you are second to none. But give a quick introduction to the listeners.
Absolutely. So WesleyLife has 12 communities, 11 of which are in Iowa, and one we just crossed the border in Illinois for the first time. We're outside of Iowa, but we're a comprehensive network of senior solutions, so senior services and senior housing. So a lot of what we have are the continuums of care, offering everything from independent living all the way to health center and short-term rehab and memory support. And that's where a lot of people know us and recognize us. But what's interesting, I think that, and people always are pleasantly surprised, we have a significant at-home piece of what we do. So hospice, home health, community nutrition with Meals on Wheels, adult day. So when we say we're passionate about being comprehensive, we really try to live by that and offer these senior solutions and services wherever people are looking for those.
Well, you know as well as I do in this industry, we're always sort of trying to push back against the stereotypes. People hear retirement or they hear senior living and they get an idea in their head that probably isn't accurate in terms of what's being offered now. I know it certainly isn't accurate for WesleyLife. I like that you try to explain to people that we're more of a health and well-being organization than we are just a senior living organization. Kind of explain how that came together.
Yeah, absolutely. So we made this shift a few years ago where we identify as a health and well-being organization that sometimes is ageless in the sense that, yes, we have that community offering, but what we're really passionate about is how can we thrive in the second half of life? And what's our role in that? What's our role in providing that platform? So we have a core four we live by, and those things are just as important as anything else. But the right outlook, being connected, eating wisely, natural movement, and we incorporate that in everything we provide and everything we offer.
So I think that sounds great. And then, one of the things that you've got going that I think is really interesting and exciting is a partnership with Genesis. I think Genesis is very well known in the health and fitness world, but people probably don't make a connection between Genesis and older adults, senior living, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so Genesis Health System did a nationwide search, and they're in the Quad Cities. And they were looking for someone that really specialized, who was an expert in senior living. And we're kind of in their backyard after that national search. And so we formed that partnership in 2019. And with that, we've really grown in the Quad Cities, something we've wanted to do. Our CEO, Rob Kretzinger, he's 26 years been leading this organization, and he's always had his eyes on growing into the Quad Cities, just knowing there's a real opportunity. Maybe it's a market. For instance, we're really interested in, not just because there's a market there and there's people to serve, but because maybe we feel it's a little behind on what we can offer and what kind of spaces and amenities and focus on health and well-being. So the partnership kicked off, and there was a couple communities that we acquired. And then in addition to that, a lot of energy the last few years, and during an interesting time, to say the least, we built a community, a CCRC in Bettendorf. So everything independent living, assisted living, memory support, our health center. It's really neat too. We take everything we learn from these other projects we've been doing the last several years. And so sometimes when people think senior living, they think nursing home, which, yeah, that's maybe a part of what we do. But we also have at the summit a rooftop bar. We have a golf simulator, so you can play Pebble Beach when it's raining outside. We have several dining experiences, everything from a bistro grab and go to you can get reservations for like a surf and turf type offering with a wine pairing to celebrate a big celebration, an anniversary, or have your children somewhere where you're really proud to bring in visitors. So we're really excited about that, and as we continue to grow with Genesis and in the Quad City area.
And of course, you mentioned the period of time that I think all of us would like to fast forward through and just sort of pretend never happened, which was the pandemic. But it was a part of the industry, and it's continued to have a lasting impact on our industry. What are you seeing, and what are you doing to combat maybe just the idea out there of, boy, I know they say it's kind of winding down, but I just don't know if community life is safe, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so there were times, and if we're all being honest, we were really worried. Is this congregate living? Is living in somewhere where you have a lot of neighbors when you're maybe a homeowner and you're not used to being connected to so many people? Is our product going to start being less desirable? Is there going to be fear of safety, security, and all of those things that come along with this pandemic, and just the fear of the unknown? And now we're really feeling like, especially the last 6 months, we feel more confident, and we're just excited because demand has never been higher for us. So our lead generation is fantastic in the sense that in the volume and the quality of people. And it's interesting as to why they're inquiring. So they're either being encouraged by their adult children, or oftentimes they're inquiring on their own because they're calling us and saying, okay, you're this network of services. I felt isolated for the first time in my life, and social connection, purpose. What do I do? I want to be more planful with my aging experience. And we think that's really, really neat. We've been saying those things for years, but and in some ways, there's always a silver lining. And even through this tragic experience of a global pandemic, we're seeing people really take charge and control of that. And when we talk about, like we kind of started with, right outlook. There's also, we're getting really into longevity science and health span. So your healthy years and how can you impact that? So we're passionate about that and providing that and communicating that with people. And so we love it when they call us and say, I'm not necessarily buying anything, but I'd really love to hear from you, because now there's just more awareness to it.
So how do you balance then with that demand being what it is? And I think that feeling where we're all sort of cautiously optimistic that we've come out on the other side and we're going to be okay as an industry. How do you balance that from maybe it's from a communication standpoint, maybe from a sales standpoint, that we have a reputation and it's sterling and people know who we are and we've been around for a while, but we don't want to rest on our laurels. We also want people to know that we're expanding in the things that you mentioned, whether it's new research or different offerings, expansions, things like that. How do you find that balance between, we're not the new kids on the block, but that doesn't mean we aren't doing new and exciting things?
That's a great question. And that kind of question, how you framed it, is exactly how a lot of times we'll start our different executive meetings and when we bring our larger group together. Because if we're claiming our pillars, we have this heritage. So we're 75 years. We just celebrated our 75th anniversary. And so we have all this wonderful reputation and this wonderful ministry that started everything we're doing. And we're so humbled by all the work that's been done to get us in this place to have a platform like we have now. But in addition to heritage, innovation. Like, so if we're saying we're passionate and committed to innovation, what does that look like? So we do things right now, and we've done so much neat work on the community side with choice and flexible options and flexible dining, added amenities. But then also on the home health, our home health side has never been larger. So on average, we're serving 600 people a day in the home health side, which from humble beginnings, and that's what's growing so quickly. And then we have our hospice and end of life care, and what we're passionate about. How do people thrive, and how do we address bereavement, and how do we support people after their loved ones have passed? And then on the other side of this whole thing, we have these wonderful campuses that have name recognition and awareness in the communities, and we have land around them. And what do? What's the next, iteration of this whole thing? And so we spend a lot of time with that. And we want to expand into active aging, 55 plus. What can we provide that's more than just, how we know we can sell housing, right? If it's age specific, but what's really the hook? Is it mission driven? Is it volunteer driven? Is it, we get excited about things like the agri-hood, and all these other things that tie into much more than the shelter of it. So we're getting really into the design of our floor plans, the design and the purposefulness of the outdoor spaces. And that's where we're really keying in on innovation and just meeting people where they're at. And then sometimes offering something they've never thought about. And then also we go back to just being that resource for people calling and saying, I kind of need some ideas, or I need a plan, or I had no idea, and that awareness piece. And so we're really passionate about that. And that's where we see us growing in the next 5-10 years and beyond.
Well, I'm going to borrow a phrase from our guest on the last show, and that is that senior living is less of a place and more of an experience. And I really like that, just that thought process. I've been in senior living marketing enough to know that there was a time, and there certainly is still a place for this, depending on who the client is that we're serving here at Bell, where home health was something that we pushed against. Oh no, you don't want home health, you want the community lifestyle. It seems like you are, and I think rightly, embracing that home health is not a competitor, it's a service we offer. And we really offer, we're going to meet you where you are. And if it's home health you need, we're going to be there. And if it's community life you desire, we're going to be there. Is that sort of an accurate portrayal of how you are evolving?
Yeah, that's spot on. And it's interesting when we have team members sometimes that join our organization, and they're these wonderful new team members, but their first reaction will be like, well, you're selling against yourself all over the place. Like, you got this community, and then you're licensed with home health and private duty home services. Isn't that going to, stop people from moving in? And I think that's maybe a natural or traditional reaction to like having all of these services. But again, we have a much larger mission. We really measure our success on how many people we're serving. And that we don't dictate what that means. We want them to tell us what they want and have the platform to do that. So that even means on some of the innovation and all these things, but if it's preserving assets, that's a real thing that we got to work with. We're living longer. So maybe home health and adult day or whatever that is, private duty or Meals on Wheels. We service the Meals on Wheels account in Polk County, for instance. Maybe that helps you preserve assets. Maybe it helps you thrive at home, and that's your choice. So we also serve things like the public health account, where people that fall through the cracks, that don't have any kind of insurance or means. And so, and then then we have premium product and everything in between. So I think your question is spot on, and we get that reaction quite a bit. One of the first questions we get sometimes when we either present or meet new groups is, well, why do you do it all? And that goes back to the core of what we're up for, and that's serving as many people and how they choose to be served.
And speaking of service, and I always ask people this, and it certainly does. It's not a resume question as much as it is a why question. You personally, why senior living? Why are you? Because I get the question all the time as a senior living marketer. Why senior living? What is it about that that's working so well for you?
Sure, that's a good question too. And I graduated from Iowa State University, and I graduated with a marketing and a journalism degree. So naturally, right, senior living. But so we kind of joke about that, but I've been a one-trick pony, because you always hear that sometimes people either you get into senior living or senior services and you run for the hills, or you're in, right? Yeah. And I found this passion. I was lucky because I feel like this natural passion to it. And what drives me is really the impact we have on such an important group of people, right? And group is only growing. The needs are only diversifying. And I also get energized by how difficult it can be. And some people, like if you work in senior living, they assume you're a nurse, which that's not a bad assumption. But of course, I know nothing about nursing. I've never been a nurse. So when I got into the world, I actually joined, my first position was as an admissions coordinator in a health center. And very quickly first I was a little overwhelmed because you're learning about licenses and there's acronyms that you have no idea what anyone's talking about. It's like, can I survive? These people are amazing and they're so smart and they know this world so well. Do I belong? So I often tell my story that if you're passionate about impact and really having a purpose-filled career, I don't know if you can find a better industry than senior living and senior services. And that's where on the hardest of days, because it's also it's not always easy, but on the hardest of days, I was just reminded of this the other day. We had an inquiry that came in, and it was this lady that her husband was just diagnosed with early onset dementia in his 50s. Can you imagine going through this? And it's like they had their retirement plan, their grandkids were coming, like all these fun milestones in life, and then you got early onset dementia and all these things that they are facing. And I got the inquiry and I was there on a day that I thought this would be a great day to have off, right? But I went into the office and I started talking to her. And when we just had some options and we talked about different avenues we could explore, the relief and the resource, of course, it's not me that's necessarily going to be providing any of these things to her, but if I wasn't there in that moment, who would have been, right? Like, or she would have had to wait for answers, or she would have gotten more nervous or worried, or, you just, to be there for people, I think is really powerful. And when I joined WesleyLife, this really drove home and why I hope to be a lifer at WesleyLife. So there was this crazy amount of flooding that happened, this flash flooding. We're in the Midwest in Iowa, so we get all the weather, but this weather there was enough rain, there was lower level parking on this affordable housing unit that's not WesleyLife affiliated, nothing to do with it. But when the city was in trouble, they called and said, what can you do? And so I came over and they're like, well, we put you on the agenda. Can you speak to it? And so I looked down at the agenda and it was the police chief, the fire chief, and the sales guy from WesleyLife. And, so I'm thinking, how amazing is that? Because we're able to provide nursing, cares. We can help with medication management. We're delivering hot meals because we have all the capacity to do that. And so it's like when I'm in that moment and you have these humbling moments where you're thinking, oh my gosh, like how neat is this? I can actually be of service and facilitate some of these things. It just drives it home and just drives my passion even deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I appreciate the time today on the podcast. Great conversation and an opportunity for people to learn a little bit about who WesleyLife is. If they want to learn more, website, any other information you want to provide, please do. Absolutely. So
WesleyLife.org, and that has all of our information and our contact information. And if people want to reach out to me personally, it's W Phillips, PHILLIPS @WesleyLife.org.
Well, Ward, thank you for joining us today. Again, Ward Phillips, VP of Business Development for WesleyLife here on the Bellwether Senior Living Podcast. Really great conversation. And I think that it gives people an idea, not just of who you are, but just that forward progressive thinking vision for what senior living is going to look like as we move into the future. And I think it's exciting stuff. So again, thanks for taking the time to join us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jeff.
And for Tom Watts, producer, engineer, Julie Montoya Houston, I'm Jeff Bell. This has been the Bellwether Senior Living Insights Podcast. Until next time, we will ring the bell and move along. Thank you.